What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Alex here from Team Generations, and today we are back again with another video. Today we're going to be looking at a couple of new promo cards for a deck that we had for a little bit here in English. We are going to be looking at an update for Gramgrace. So over the past few months in English, this really hasn't been doing too much. It was a pretty hyped card, so as like a kind of like an alternate budget deck kind of deal, but it's kind of evolved into something else with some promo cards in here. So I did want to kind of go over that and kind of speak about those promo cards, what it does for the deck, and where this deck kind of sits in the meta right now. So I think it is important to kind of mention it because there is an overall lesson, I think, to be learned here that goes beyond really this deck. So I'm going to get into the deck list first, kind of discuss where it sits in the meta, and then just the issue that I'm kind of talking about. So yeah, let's hop into it. Alright, starting off with the ride line, since yet in English, I don't know in Japan if it came out yet, I don't think it did, but we are getting a kind of like a trial deck for this, and that is going to come with an actual ride line, but for now, I am actually still running the kind of like the Blaster ride line over here, with the Wingle Brave over here. You do need that name, so it is actually a pretty important starter, but the Marin's going to pop out that Wingle Brave to then serve as kind of fodder for the Blaster Dark. So Blaster Dark getting you that like twin drive off the bat, I feel like is really important in the early game just to put on pressure, get some stuff in your hand, maybe some cards that you definitely need. I feel like overall this is a solid play, and you do deplete your soul with this a little bit faster, especially if you use another card I'll show you in the main deck, but at the same time, I feel like you just need to build your hand, have these resources just to survive, because you need to make it to a Persona turn, and in the meta right now, I'll kind of go over as I go through the deck, but I feel like you need to make it to a Persona turn, and it's kind of difficult in general, even with the promos. But of course, Gramgrace over here, and since this is a boss, I'll go over its skill. Continues on Vanguard Circle when you Persona Ride. It also increases the power of your back row units as well. Act on Vanguard Circle once per turn, Counterblast, Soul Blast 1, draw a card, choose a card from your hand, call it to your back row Rearguard Circle until the end of turn. That unit can attack from the back row and gets an extra 10k. So making sure that your back row is really impactful. 33k, hopefully beater in the back row with some additional effects that maybe helps out Gramgrace with the promo. I feel like is decent overall. Its last skill at the end of battle, put your back row Rearguard to enter attacked. When it attacked, put that unit into your soul, draw a card. So you are able to kind of replenish your soul a little bit, which is I feel like the hardest resource to kind of manage in this deck. There are a lot of cards that now recycle from your soul, do things with your soul. So a lot of pieces now are in motion with the promo card. So that is the ride line over here. Again, I feel like this is the best we can do for right now. Maybe when the other one comes out in English, we'll put that in, but for right now, that is what I'm rocking. Let's move into the main deck now. Kicking us off on the main deck, I am still running 3 copies of the Persona Ride, so obviously, like I said, you need to Persona Ride in this deck. It's just super important. I feel like it's important in the format in general, but even more so since this kind of has an effect that does interact with your back row. You make really nice columns in this, but I feel like the game can kind of manage some of the columns that this makes now. So again, it is essential to kind of hit that Persona Ride, but make sure that like we've put enough pressure on early game to really close out by that first ride. So need to Persona in this deck. We got the extra 3 copies of the main boss in the ride line. And over here, first up, this is one of the new promos for us. We did get this in English pretty recently, I believe. This is going to be Knight of Soaring Blade for Ferbinal, something like that. Fierenball? I think that's how to say it. Auto and back row Rearguard Center at the end of battle. This unit attacked. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, Soul Blast 1. Discard a card from your hand. Choose one of your opponent's Vanguards. Choose one of your Vanguards with Gramgrace in its card name, and it gets an extra 10k plus a drive until the end of the turn. So again, a little bit costly, Soul Blast plus a discard from hand, but there is like a discard fodder in here. I feel like in general, you have some cards that you don't mind necessarily getting rid of, and this is just way too impactful not to put down. Like the Persona Ride was great, but again, I feel like this deck had a resource issue on top of just like a lack of overall pressure, and this extra drive really adds to that pressure. Now I feel like this card is super limited because of the text that your opponent has to be on grade 3. If you're going second, sure, but again, if you're going second, you're probably going to be behind just in the curve in general. I don't know why, but this deck doesn't feel absolutely great going second. This definitely helps it out and lets you maybe live a little bit longer, but overall, I feel like the pace of this deck is a little bit weird in the current meta, but this definitely helps us at least try to keep this somewhat viable, and it's definitely a 4 of in this deck, like 100%. I was trying this at 3. You do need to see it every single turn, and there are ways to kind of recur this, but at the same time, you absolutely need to see it at least once per game to kind of get that in circulation, so it is a 4 of. Next up over here too, this is just an extremely costly deck. As we're going through it, you're going to see I'm still rocking Forsados over here. I know it's kind of an odd choice, but I like to have these. They're, just can't get retired. I don't believe by Gandiva. I'm not 100% off the top of my head. I forget the wording of Gandiva, but just general things that would retire it. Can't really go for it. They have to be swung into. These can also really just countercharge you, soul charge you at the key moment where you need. Sometimes, your opponent's on their back foot. They you swing into a rear guard with this, and just to get your counter charge and your soul blast off, because again, this costs a soul blast, your Vanguard costs a soul blast. They're just like mid battle phase soul blast kind of things that you need to do that the timing with Fasado really helps us out with. So still rocking 3 of these guys over here. Kind of an odd choice, plus they're grade 3, so if you do hit the over trigger, you do get the twin drive off them, which is super solid. And like I said, you need to persona ride, so I'm running one Regalius piece over here, the Gradius Gralis. It's just like an extra persona ride if you did not ride that turn. Very, very, very useful. Absolute include in my opinion. Next up here too, you are discarding things. I feel like you are committing a lot of stuff from hand in general, so this kind of helps us out with the flow of the game. This is actually a huge addition. If you have an open counterblast, this is a great card. If not, if you need to like discard something, this is discard fodder at that point, and I really don't mind it. I feel like we have enough consistent bodies, and this really helps us draw into some key pieces, helps us kind of get there. So this is play this counterblast 1. I forgot the name of it. Wisdom of beginning that cleared the world. So really solid actually card. I'm glad that they printed this in a rare, not like a higher rarity, but play this with Counterblast 1, draw 2 cards, choose 2 cards from your hand, call them to rear guard if the grade of each of them is less than equal to your Vanguard, and discard them if not. So again, just a little bit more of the field fill, helping us extend plays potentially, getting us the bodies on board that we really do need. Next up over here in the grade 2 lineup, we are looking at 3 of these. I did have this previously at 4, but I feel like now with the Fasados in the deck and just the general flow of it, I feel like 3 is kind of the correct number. It's going to be Magic of Alteration Turnar. So Turnar is really important for fueling our soul and countercharging. The only thing is it's locked behind, you have to be at like 3 damage. So 3 more face down cards, which turning cards face down is obviously not a problem in this deck. It's just like being at that stage, at that point of the game can be a little iffy. Because of that, I think 3 is the right ratio. 4 just feels a little bit clunky, like it's not as good of a body, doesn't give itself power at certain points, but putting into your soul, countercharge is super, super important in the deck, just getting those resources back. You're going to see this whole deck becomes like a game of managing your resources, pacing correctly at different times, and something that really helps us with a kind of like a resource thing in general that you don't really have to commit from hand. Just Mothgirl Maple, just including one of these is really solid. You ditch her once for the ride deck, ditch her for like discard, things like that. Like this is just super recurable, just easy to kind of get in the deck, on the field. Again, it doesn't really buff up, but again, the idea is like you're persona riding in this thing. You have the persona ride from the back row too. It doesn't really necessarily need that extra 5k that so many other grade 2s do get. Again, just a free card, feels nice, kind of getting that off at times. Next up over here into the grade 1s, another promo. I'm running this at 4. I might cut it down to 3 to be honest, but this is going to be Bringer of Soaring Wind Locked. So Locked is a new card again for this back row rear guard circle. At the end of the turn, if you have a Vanguard with Gramgrace in its card name, retire this unit, choose a grade 3 from your soul, and then add it to your hand. So soul is a hard kind of resource to manage, but at the same time, you need to see your persona rides. You need to see those grade 3, the new promo card for that as well. This just kind of guarantees it for next turn. Without that grade 3, the new promo one, like the deck does not feel as good. You need that triple drive. You need that extra 10k on Gramgrace. Gramgrace felt like a little bit of a wet noodle. If you swing poke, your opponent all of a sudden hits 1 defensive. It just felt kind of bad. It's a 15k shield for a 2 to pass. Then if you persona ride with the 23k, so making sure that your other card, your other promo goes live with that 33k Gramgrace at least on a persona ride turn is super important, and this guy helps us kind of maintain that. So as of right now, I am at 4 of. I think I would try to maybe bring this down to 3, but right now, like I feel like I need to see it at a point, so I'm just running it at 4. Do what you want to do with your ratios over here. I feel like this deck is very flexible. It's not 100% settled in my mind, but this is a good basis to kind of go off of. Still running 2 of these, and again, I know Soul is very difficult to kind of come by in this deck, but just the card draw, like you kind of need it in this deck. You're gonna just rip through your hand, resources, things of that nature. Like I really think that this card is still important to include to some degree. You can only pop probably 1 of these off per game if we're being honest. So with that in mind, I kept it at 2 of. If you can't get it off, discard it. I think that it's just like solid as a booster, especially if you're on a persona ride turn. 18k helps you hit those magic numbers in general. Something that also along those lines kind of exists still in the deck. I know this was a little bit more popular at one point, but Knight of Gale, Blugger, something like that. I think Buger, I don't know. I can't read if that's an L or an I. But continues on rearguard circle during your turn if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater. This just gets 5k. Very simple, very easy. 23k booster on a persona ride turn. Can't really get much sweeter than that in the back row. Very, very solid numbers that it will make. Just easy, doesn't retire itself. They have to snipe it in the back row, which isn't like a huge deal to do in the format at the moment, but at the same time is not too bad. So I am running that. And then excuse the flipped up card. That is going to be the Elementaria Sanctitude, the order card, and then 3 other PGs. nothing really more to say about that. That's just kind of the standard. Tons of Stride deck sets kind of running around with that triple drive. I think once the new grade 4 searchers come out, you're definitely going to see a little bit more of the triple drive symbol running around, so just having that is great. And then obviously you can only have 4 PGs in general in the deck, so 3 others. Cool, let's pan out and get into the triggers now. All right, kicking us off over here, obviously no surprise, running the over trigger. We're running a ton of grade 3s in this deck, so this is actually pretty impactful once you hit it. If you hit it offensively, and again, you're typically triple driving if you can, so the chances of hitting this do become definitely a little bit greater. I have hit this once or twice, and it just feels super impactful when you have all those grade 3s kind of swinging. The timing with Fasado sometimes, if you need to kind of like get your soul right, get your counter charge off, whatever it may be, could be annoying because, you know, you hit this, then you've already swung with your Fasados and whatnot in the front row. But if you're at like a nice point, so to speak, you hit this, it feels really, really good. So definitely the in-theme one in my opinion. Next up over here, these should be the 10K ones, but I'm actually running draws. I think the draws are super important in the deck. You can run fronts, but I feel like the power isn't really an issue in this deck. It's more so just like resources. This kind of helps you get there. This kind of helps you earlier in the game. Again, discard fodder if you need to. These, again, should be the 10K ones. If you can't afford the, or, you know, you just don't want to like spend all that money on the, because I think the rest of this deck is fairly cheap aside from the promos, which, you know, you should be kind of under $50 in general. Vanilla fronts are always better than vanilla draws. Doesn't matter the gameplay aspect. Just the 15K is way more impactful as a shield, and you know, fronts are still decent overall. But I feel like early game, late game, you still want to draw a lot, and I think that this really does help us kind of survive and just get the key pieces we need in hand. For the vanilla ones, again, I think early game you want to mitigate damage. This, you can run the 2 crit ones if you're really afraid of the Stride deck sets. To be honest, I would say try it out. Try like 2 of those, 2 of these. The vanilla for them is like absolutely fine too. Completely up to you. And then again, I'm going to ask you to excuse the flipped up cards, but this is going to be 8 crit in general. I was kind of flexing these for a while, like just flexing them out, seeing mid game, like, you know, I'm going to say, all right, this game I'm going to be a front trigger. This game I'm going to try extra draws or whatever it was. And I feel like 8 crit is definitely the way to be. Triple driving on your Vanguard, just way more impactful. The crits felt overall. So that is my personal opinion. And then let's just like pause, and then I'll go into kind of a little bit more of a discussion on why, you know, what really happened here with this deck and what the issues are. I know I just went through the whole profile and just explained some of my choices, and I put this deck through its paces. I've come to the conclusion that right now in set 10 in the English format, you know, this just is not viable enough if you want to compete at a high level. If you want to go locals with this, like absolutely, like tear it up, do your thing. If you really like this aesthetic, if you're into Keter, you know, go for it. I don't think these are too expensive. They're definitely worth whatever they're charging right now. Like this isn't like a $50 promo, none of these or anything like that, but I feel like it's just an issue that we're getting promos late, and decks that should have seen a little bit more spotlight, you know, just aren't doing that, because I feel like a lot of people were fans of Gramgrace. This is going to come out in the little deck set that they're coming with later in this year, and at that point, I don't know if the ride line is going to fix something, but I just don't feel like this is a good time, and that meta won't be a good time to play this deck overall. So that's just my one kind of gripe with this overall. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. Let me know your comments down below, your thoughts. If you agree with me, if you disagree, if you think this is still a viable deck overall, totally let me know. If there's anything you would change, obviously, too, just let me know. Yeah, so thank you guys again. This is Alex from Team Generations, signing out.